In this segment, I'm going to talk about the samples that ship with SceneDesigner and what each of them shows off. I'll also talk about how to preview scenes using the Scene app sample. So first we're going to open up a scene. We'll open up the holodeck sample. These samples, by the way, can be found in the Gamebryo samples models SceneDesigner examples directory, as you can see by this path right here. All right, so this is the holodeck sample, and what it is primarily, it's very simple graphically, as you can see. What it's meant to show off are the fact that you can, if you turn the snap on, each of the items, the entities in this scene, was designed to snap very nicely together on a grid. And so this particular scene, or one like it, can be snapped together very, very quickly by putting together all of these different pieces and snapping them onto a grid and adding end caps like this. This also shows off particle systems. There's several particle systems in here and some lighting. So each of the particle systems has a light associated with it, as you can see, that's of different colors, and there's a green light there. And in addition to the lights, there are also several cameras in the scene. So we can switch between. So there's a camera that's sitting here looking at the fire. There's one looking at down the hallway. There's one looking at the mist. There's one looking at the sun, and then there's a player camera. This is actually the starting camera for this scene. So there's a special type of object in here called Scene App Camera Controller, and it has parameters in here such as invert pitch, the max amount of space that the camera can drop while walking around, the speed for walking and running, and the start camera, which happens to be player camera. This data is used when previewing scenes from SceneDesigner in the Scene app sample, which is under full demos in samples full demos in Gamebryo. And SceneDesigner actually has built in a functionality for automatically launching the current scene and previewing it with Scene app. So you can either do that by choosing View Launch External Application, or by simply pressing the F5 button, which I've done right now. This will launch Scene app and bring it up with your scene using your starting camera, and it allows you to walk around in the scene, and it does terrain following. In this case, it's just a flat plane, so there's not much there. It also does can do 2D collision. So notice I'm running into the walls and sliding, and I'll show you how this was done. But this is a very useful sample application for previewing your work. Hit escape to quit out of that. I'll just point out to you, if you bring up your options and go to external application settings, you can actually specify any command line to run as well as the path to any application. This is the command line options. And so if it's blank, it does the default path for Scene app. However, you can specify this to be your game and specify a parameter such as maybe the name of the file. Or any additional command line options, the name of the file is automatically passed. And so this allows you to set up any application as your previewing application, not just Scene app. So you saw how we were sliding around in that example, and that is because we were simply picking on the objects that were on the ground here and doing some very simple collision based on them. So now I'm going to open up a different scene. I'm going to open up the ruins scene. The ruins scene is primarily to show off the shadows, the dynamic shadows in SceneDesigner. So as you can see right here, each skeleton actually has a shadowing spotlight that's inside of it. Let's get a better view over here of this guy's spotlight. So if we select that spotlight, we can see on here it's got a light shadow generator component, and that shadow generator component tells it the shadow technique that it wants to show. And because it's actually inside the skeleton, it's casting shadows of the skeleton's ribs all throughout the scene. We also have a camera up here that's actually uses an inherited transformation component to inherit its transforms from the skeleton. So if we switch to that camera, you'll notice we can sort of watch the skeleton move around in the scene from an animated viewpoint. Another thing to point out with the shadows is this directional light up here, which is using a PCF shadow technique. We can change the shadow technique that's being used, and you'll notice the quality of the shadows has been significantly reduced. If we switch it up to here, it makes it a lot smoother. And then we can animate this around so you can see that this is actually a dynamic shadow casting light. Let me change my viewpoint a little bit. There. So you can view the shadows happening in real time and being cast in real time in Gamebryo. The final sample that I'm going to open is MADLAB. MADLAB was meant to show a larger area of interconnecting rooms, and these rooms are set up such that they each are their own entities and contain various numbers of props that are all individual entities as well. So we can go in here and see, here's a nice room with this mobile in it. We can zoom down into one of these rooms and see that there's a table. Excuse me. There's a table here with various objects on it, and there's also dynamic shadows being used in this thing as well. So you can see the shadows here on the floor that are coming from lights up in the air here. So if we want to hit F5 to jump into this model in SceneApp, this is the default model that actually runs when you run the SceneApp application. So if you go to your full demos directory and you launch SceneApp, you'll actually see this model loaded up. And you can look around and see this particular model. So that's pretty much it for the samples in SceneDesigner, and that's the end of this segment.